Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first regular business meeting of 2020. Our meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, Scotland, Squamish, Away. Motion to adopt our agenda, moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any notes motion, Council? Seeing none. We don't have any delegations, petitions, or proclamations this evening. Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this would be someone who feels that they cannot wait 2 weeks to be put on an agenda that wishes to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 8, which is first and second reading of the District of Zoning Bylaw for the CD 96 zone Squamish Canyon, number 266517. This is first and second reading, so there won't be an opportunity for the public to speak, although we did receive quite a few emails today, and Council has received them on their desks. I'll turn it over to our planning staff.
All right, good evening and Happy New Year, Mayor and Council. My name is Kerry Hamilton, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department, presenting to you today Bylaw Amendment number 2685, 2018, for the Squamish Canyon project for first and second reading. So this project was first presented to Council at a Committee of the Whole meeting on November 26, 2019. Today's presentation will cover similar information for Council's official review for first and second reading, and will include some updated and new information highlighted in red in the following sections. Staff's presentation will provide an overview of relevant zoning and land ownership for the area, provide a quick summary of the proposed project and its sustainability objectives, highlight important topics and reports related to engineering and environment, which now includes a traffic impact assessment, and provide a brief overview of how the project is meeting Council priorities in OCP policy, and summarize public engagement to date and next steps for the project. As background, Crown Land authorizations first referred the Squamish Nation project, then named Man Canyon Eco Tours, to the District of Squamish in 2015. The district provided a response outlining 2016 comments and policies, and the Squamish Canyon project received a provincial license in 2017. The license was amended 3 times over the course of 2017 and 2018, including license holder name changes, term changes, and included an updated management plan. The woodlot license, which previously covered the project area, was amended in 2018 to officially remove 7.9 hectares of logging rights for the protection and purpose of this provincial licensed area. An application to the district for a temporary use permit was made in 2018 and was later reapplied under a rezoning application in 2019. So Bylaw Amendment 2685, 2018 is proposing to rezone roughly 10.5 hectares of land consistent with the provincial license agreement area and 0.9 hectares of land for the purpose of parking. The bylaw also amends Bylaw 2200, 2011 to include new commercial recreation ecotourism use, which is listed here. So Bylaw Amendment 2685, 2018 is proposing to rezone land currently zoned residential RS1 in Ecological Reserve and Protection P6. The provincial license area is found just south of CD 13, Atlantic Power's hydroelectric power generation facility, and the now Lafarge-owned land zoned resource. The project area is bounded by RS1 zone land owned by the Squamish Nation to the south and west, and uncoded Crown land to the southeast. The official community plan, short form OCP, land use designation for the majority of this area falls under resource and recreation, which supports a wide array of public and commercial recreation uses. The resource land north of the property has a land use designation of future residential neighborhood. The whole area is outside of the growth boundary. However, recreation tourism activities are supported under the OCP growth management policy. The P6 zone, which is Ecological Reserve and Protection, was created recently in 2018 to protect the district's Powerhouse Springs water supply area. The zone boundary was roughly drafted in line with this geotechnical and hydrological consultant report in the recommended protection area image you see above here. As you can see on this map, the Squamish Canyon project only borders the protection zone. However, the zoning mapping was created with a bit more of a buffer and therefore officially falls within the Crown licensed area. Regardless, the report, as well as the P6 zone, supports lobbying, trails, and education and interpretive signage, which, as you can see from the map, the area already supports several trails networks in the area. According to the finding of this report, an amendment of this P6 zone for Squamish Canyon uses would have no impact on the district's powerhouse spring water supply. So the first phase of the Squamish Canyon proposal includes roughly 800 meters of boardwalk elevated off the forest floor and roughly 200 meters of canyon walkway. The second phase of the project, marked by dashed lines at the southeast corner, would include the addition of 2 bridges over the canyon and more elevated boardwalks with lookout platforms on the other side of the canyon, which is within this the current P6 zone. The canyon boardwalk attraction includes an entrance area that includes a ticket booth, public washrooms, and a concession stand. The whole area will be elevated boardwalks and decking and offer covered areas as well as seating options. This area will be open to the public for other recreational users used during hours of operation before entering the turnstile and ticket area of the boardwalks. The trail network ends at an event space and children's natural play area, also located on elevated platforms and weather protected by sails. This area will consist of a playground, washrooms, cafe, concession stand, small merchandise area, and a small stage. The area can be used and accessed separate from the boardwalk attraction and offer further community gathering opportunities. CD96 will secure a minimum of 100 parking stalls for Phase 1 operations, with enough CD96 zone land remaining to expand the parking lot if needed. The parking lot will offer a one-way drive aisle with a few entrances and exits along the Powerhouse Spring Road. The parking area is outside of the provincial license area and is underneath existing power lines owned by Atlantic Power. Atlantic Power has a lease with the province to use this area for hydro lines, and Squamish Canyon have both an agreed right-of-way agreement with Atlantic Power and a sublease agreement with the province for the use of this area as parking. The parking lot includes 1.5 meter pathway to the entrance and picnic areas where possible. This area will be reviewed in more detail at the time of development permit. Select Contracts prepared a visitation study for the project. The report found that an average party size is expected to be 3.3 people. Guest duration in the experience is an average of 2 hours. The daily average total visits is expected to be 374 visitors per day, which is expected to result in an average of 128 vehicles per day. The averages are derived from an expected 75 peak days a year, which, if weekends and weather are taken into account, 17 of those days are expected to see the true peak visitation. The total annual visitors expected in year 3 is 136,000. The graphs were shown average guests in blue, average cars in yellow, and the average cars parked red. Those are the lines in the parking lot per hour. The graph on the left shows an average day, while the graph on the right shows a peak day. The tables below show the maximum expected for each category. Graphs were also prepared to show people, cars, and cars parked per hour at full build-out. Staff have prepared this graph to show the expected differences between maximum year 1 visitation and full build-out maximum visitation per hour. Note the dark colors show peak days, while the lighter colors show an average day. The Canyon Project's 2018 Management Plan highlights a number of sustainability goals for the project, some of which are still feasible and others to be revised and amended in an updated management plan. For energy, the applicant intends to explore microhydropower as a future renewable energy source. In the meantime, the site will be connected to hydro with infrastructure capacity to accommodate electrical vehicle and electrical bike charging stations. So for services, a connection to municipal water is feasible for this project and is planned for, helping to reduce bottled water waste, and rainwater will be captured and stored for irrigation and vegetation needs. For environment, goals such as elevated boardwalks are an additional expense to the project. However, they also help to preserve and protect natural drainage in the area and small mammal crossings. Boardwalk railings are also proposed to be installed to keep visitors on the designated trails. The project, as it develops, intends to be carbon neutral and achieve low to zero waste and low to zero emissions, working towards a zero waste and negative emissions. Site access. Although the initial predominant mode of travel to access the site will be by vehicle, the project's future direction includes electrical vehicle charging stalls, tour bus transportation, and road upgrades to create a designated bike walking area along Powerhouse Spring roads from the Valley Cliff community. Capacity plans are also proposed should canyon activity or parking reach capacity. It will be communicated to the public at the Highway 99 intersection turnoff via sign on the highway and a flag person at the entrance to Mamquam FSR Road to avoid unnecessary travel up the road. So a number of walking and biking trails are accessed via the existing service road. And this is in the blue line, which is the Mamquam River Access Road in the yellow line. You can see those. Access to mountain biking trails via the service road will not be impacted by this project. Similarly, access via the Mamquam River Access Road also will not be affected. The provincial license area agreement includes two important kayak access points to the Mamquam River, both highlighted in red dashed lines. There's one kind of in the far corner there. One is near the bridge and the other directly crosses the proposed Squamish Canyon Boardwalk network. A petition to preserve these accesses was initiated by BC Whitewater Society and sent to staff following the application's development showcase release. Staff have hosted several meetings and discussions between the applicant and the Mamquam River Access Society and BC Whitewater Society to address and discuss kayak access preservation. Both accesses will be preserved as part of the Memorandum of Understanding between the applicant and the Mamquam River Access Society, and it will be a condition of rezoning adoption. MRAS and BC Whitewater are also seeking a provincial license to preserve these access points in perpetuity. The parcel can be accessed from Highway 99 through Mamquam River Forest Service Road, as seen in red on the aerial image, and Powerhouse Spring roads in green. Control and oversight of the Mamquam FSR falls under the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development, also known as Flynn Road. Commercial users of the road are required to obtain road use permits from the ministry and enter into road maintenance agreements. Currently, maintenance of the road includes occasional grading and minimal applications of dust suppression by logging companies and the district. The primary user of the road is responsible to enter into maintenance agreements with other users based on usage, all of which is overseen and managed by the ministry. There's more detail about this road provided in the report, but main points are that the applicant has a road use permit and that dust suppression applications will increase at the applicant's expense. Bunt & Associates were hired to do a traffic impact assessment, short form TIA, to determine if upgrades are required at the intersection of Mamquam FSR and Highway 99, the primary access to the Squamish Canyon project. The report makes assumptions on the vehicle and parking data collected in the peak season in 2017 for the Squamish Gondola, Squamish Chief, and Shannon Falls. The TIA indicates the intersection is currently not performing at an acceptable level of service, with wait times over 1 minute for left turns onto the highway. Forecasting in this draft TIA shows a significant increase in vehicle wait times, trying to turn left into the highway, with the worst case scenario being 10 minutes wait times in the year 2030. This was forecasted using a 2.3 growth rate for Highway 99 and assuming that gondola traffic will complete U-turns at this intersection. Bunt believes that a more realistic growth rate for Highway 99 would be closer to 1% and recommends that U-turn signage be added to Highway 99 to direct U-turns away from this intersection and towards the Squamish Chief intersection, which has dedicated merge lanes. These recommendations would have significantly less impact to the wait times. This would be 1.5 minute wait times for left turns onto Highway 99 in the year 2030. So no, MOTI has not yet agreed to this reduced growth rate, but have agreed that they could be less than 2.3%, so we're still kind of waiting on that decision. But staff anticipate the updated TIA for public hearing will incorporate a growth rate somewhere between 1% and 2%. We skip through here. Either way, this project will place more vehicles at an intersection that is underperforming. To mitigate safety concerns, BUNT recommends the following measures, and they are raised channelized islands for better delineated traffic flow for users of both the highway and the FSR, a slip lane for westbound right turns turning north onto the highway to allow for better merging with traffic. You can see that in the green. Repainted lane lines and arrows in the northbound right turn lane in blue, and signage for a traffic U-turn route at the Squamish Chief South Access. So as the district does not own this road and the property is on Crown land, typical rezoning legal tools like land development agreements cannot be secured. Therefore, staff are suggesting that a number of servicing agreement related conditions are completed by adoption and then written and amended into the provincial license. This means that water connection details will be secured by adoption. We will require VCH approval of the septic system prior to adoption. Stormwater management falls under DPA 1 and can be secured at development permit. Hydro legal agreements for usage should be drafted and signed prior to adoption. Flood management protocols to be updated and secured in the provincial license prior to adoption, along with conditions to indemnify the district should flood damage occur. An emergency services plan, which includes a fire hydrant, fire truck access, and turning radiuses, will need to be amended and secured in the provincial license prior to adoption. In summary, given the Crown land and road constraints, the district will be using adoption as a way to secure most engineering works. A bioinventory report was produced by Cascade Environmental Resource Group. The report notes the removal of logging rights from the land as an ecological benefit and documents the following valuable environmental resources with 22 mitigation measures to protect these resources. The report also speaks to streamside protection and enhancement areas, as the project will fall under DPA 1. All buildings are confirmed outside of the SPIA, and all trails within the SPIA will require federal and provincial approvals prior to DPA 1 issuance. A wildlife management plan was also prepared. It recommends no dogs and strict construction and operation protocols to avoid wildlife attractants and how to address wildlife when it is encountered in the area. The report speaks to the area being supportable habitat for black-tailed deer, black bears, coyotes, and rare cougars, and confirms that the proposed design measures will allow for minimal disruption to small mammal travel and will allow for large mammal travel through the area during temporal closure times. So this is typically from dusk to dawn. Nighttime activity is not proposed at this time and can be secured in the DPA 1 permit. So OCP policy that supports the project or guides rezoning requirements are summarized as followed on this slide. They include recreation tourism supported outside of growth boundary, environmental policy and review practices, protect wildlife and minimize wildlife conflicts, preserve and connect and enhance access to natural areas, open space and outdoor recreation, expand and enhance access to recreation amenities, and support activities and development in alignment with our brand. This development is aligned with 3 council strategic priorities: the planet and environment through more preservation of the environment habitat than RS1 zoning could have likely offered, the economy and local jobs. Tourism is a core economic sector for the region and plays a vital role in the district's economic vitality, and neighborhood connectivity in public spaces, as the covered play area and stage offers an inviting space to support community connectedness and social gatherings. The application received over 50 comments during the development showcase phase, many of which were regarding the Mamquam kayak access concerns and the Mamquam FSR road access and traffic-related concerns. The project was referred out to over 10 external referrals, including Squamish Nation, and the applicant held a public information meeting on October 22nd, 2018. All 50 email inquiries were informed of the PIM date and location via email by staff 10 days prior to the event. Over 30 people were in attendance and 12 more comments were collected. All public comments can be found in Schedule F to this report, with the exception of over 20 new letters of support received today, which have been included on blue paper to your package today. So next steps for this project, should first and second reading be approved, would be to go to public hearing, and should council give third reading, a number of conditions would be required for adoption. As previously mentioned, as no land development agreements can be secured on Crown land, adoption will be the time to ensure details and legal agreements are secured. So if conditions are met and council moves adoption, the file will proceed to DPA 1 and DPA 3 review, and from there, site alteration permits and building permits will also be required. The staff's recommendation to council is that the District of Squamish give first and second reading to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200-2011 amendment bylaws Squamish Canyon number 2685-2018. Thank you.
Council, questions?
So, I think I may have asked a bit about this last time, but I know there's been some discussion, and in my mind it's not clear. Like, I think often land use tenures, someone may have the exclusive right to run a mountain bike or guiding business in a particular area, but it doesn't necessarily preclude other public access. This seems different, and I'm not sure how normal this is or isn't, in that it seems to generally restrict public access a little more. We're talking about enshrining some access for the River Watershed Society and so on. I'm just wondering if you can clarify a little bit about, in general, what public access might there be to some areas along the river and so on if this proceeds, or what do we have to enshrine now in some sort of agreement to protect that?
For sure. So through you, Mayor, there are two different types of agreements. There's a license and a lease. So at this time, they have a license with the province, and that allows them to use the land for these purposes. It does not allow them to restrict access from the public to that land. Now, as they move forward, they will be looking to secure a lease, which will then protect their assets. So the enclosed buildings, the boardwalks, they may want to restrict the public's access to those, and that would be secured through the license. As for the access for the public, this memorandum of understanding, which we will secure for adoption, will ensure that that access for the public will be secured regardless if it's a license or a lease.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Stoner.
Following up on that point, the staff report says that the MOU is between the proponent and the Member River Access Society, BC Whitewater, and it's not actually tied to the property itself. Is there any mechanism that we can use that would tie it to the property itself in consideration that maybe that's overhead?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, we have recommended to BC Whitewater and to the Mountain River Access Society to get a license agreement from the province to secure that in perpetuity. But for now, this will stand as long as this applicant and the business itself is in operation. That memorandum of understanding will be secured.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'm particularly interested in the transportation impact assessment aspect of this proposal, and I understand that an updated report will be provided to council by third reading. My main concern is that we find an integrated solution at the highway intersection, not only for the Mountain River Forest Service Road, but also for the other side, the industrial access road. I've been a part of conversations around this intersection for about 10 years now, also with the Squamish Nation, and there are persistent issues since the highway upgrade. And the reason for that is that the safety, the visibility, if you like, for highway re-entry northbound from the industrial access road was changed during that upgrade in the construction. And it's really only worsened since due to the pressures of new traffic, especially from the gondola operation. And there have been three solutions that have been proposed for this dilemma on the west side of the highway, and all three of them would affect every user, all users, and they are a protected northbound laneway, which would impact the proposed slipway, I think is being referred to, northbound from the east side. The second solution that was discussed during the upgrade was tunneling under the highway, seriously discussed at that time. And thirdly, a highway roundabout. Now that might seem pie in the sky, but in fact, I would describe the people involved in these conversations as exasperated with the failure to find solutions. These signage and lighting initiatives have been taken are not seen to be enough by the people using the intersection. And by the way, that includes the gondola shuttle bus operator, who is very attentive and observant and informative on the issues of that intersection. So my question is, how can we be assured that the updated traffic study can take into account these integrated, an integrated solution for all? What they may be, I don't know, but I do see a lack of mention of the issues on the west side of the highway in the traffic impacts assessment, and this could be readily remedied through better enhanced consultation with those stakeholders.
Is there a response to that? I mean, it wasn't necessarily a question aside from had it been considered.
Definitely. I forgot to actually introduce Devin Kianaga here. She's from engineering, so I'll let him take over. Yeah, sorry.
And with that,
Obviously that question.
through you,
yeah.
Mayor. I think I can answer at least the portion, or I can speak to the portion about the TIA or the traffic impact assessment, taking into account the westbound turning in the westbound side of the highway, or sorry, the west side of the highway. So the traffic impact assessment does take into account traffic count data that we have, or that fund has for that intersection. And it does look at and identify impact to vehicles turning out of the west side of the highway. But you're right, it does not go into any further detail in terms of looking at solutions to try and alleviate any issues on the westbound side. In terms of an integrated approach and going that route with this traffic impact assessment, I'm honestly, and this is where you might have some comments on this too, Kerry, is I'm not sure if this is, I'm not sure if this project is the appropriate place to have that full discussion. The impacts from specifically this project have been shown to be quite minimal. So as Kerry mentioned when she introduced the traffic impact assessment, it was completed using a growth rate on the highway to assume that you're going to get more users on the highway. And I think the growth rate was 2.3%. Bunt is suggesting that's significantly overestimating the actual capacity of the highway. And so why I'm saying this is when you look at what the modeling gives in terms of the impacts to the west side of the highway and vehicle turning movements out of the west side, it shows that the main impacts shown in the report are due to the growth, not due to the actual vehicles coming from the canyon traffic. So I don't know, I wouldn't want to speak to this point as to whether the canyon project should be responsible for significant, I mean, you're talking about significant upgrades at this intersection to address those concerns. And I don't know if the canyon project is really the suitable project to take that on. But what I can say is that the impact assessment did look at the impacts from the canyon project, and it was very minimal. So based on that, I don't know if it's really appropriate. I don't know if you have any.
Maybe I'll just add one thing to clarify is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the increase of the usage of the canyon project with this intersection doesn't actually impact the Site B turning radiuses and their wait times. So it actually has no impact on the west side users, to clarify that.
Maybe I'll just leave off with a couple of observations then. I would agree that we wouldn't want to put the onus on the Squamish Canyon project to fix all of these things. We should instead use it as an opportunity to bring discussion participants together and share information. The proposed slipway does impact Site B. The Site B folks and the Squamish Nation have engineering works or plans done and proposed to the ministry for a laneway. And that laneway would impact on the proposed slipway because the laneway is northbound between the intersection and the bridge. So a new protected laneway northbound from the west side. And so they don't work together because there's not enough space there. Secondly, the proposed solutions in the traffic impact assessment report of making better utilization of the Squamish Chief parking lot roundabout and potentially the Valley Drive. Those I think would be very beneficial, not only to the future Squamish Canyon users and the Forest Service Road users, but also to the Site B constituents as well. And in fact, they're solutions that we should be looking at today. So I just welcome the discussion. I hope we can expand it to include all stakeholders that are involved in that intersection.
I'm just gonna put myself on the list, and I've got Councillor Stoner and Councillor Pettingill, unless there was someone else with a question. Where do all the kayakers, mountain bikers, walkers park? Is that parking under the hydro lines just reserved for canyon folks, or can anybody use?
The applicant has informed me that the parking is going to be open to the public. He intends to offer that to the other recreational users in the area. They currently, you can kind of see this little area right here. There's a kind of an open gravel area. There's no delineation for how you park there. It's kind of free for all, do what you want. So that would probably be not, that wouldn't be managed out of this project. They'd probably say no parking there and then support the parking in the designated parking area. So it actually would help clean up the parking in the area.
When we talk about access to Powerhouse Springs, that the gate will be closed to the public during regular operations, and an attendant will open it as required for tour bus turnaround, emergency access, district vehicles, logging trucks. In that management plan, are we writing in maximum wait times? So like, who's gonna open the gate, and where will they be, and how long will it take them to get to the gate? And I mean, if it's emergency access, there's a time frame. If it's a logging truck, that's a business operation, there's a time frame. If it's our staff, that's a business operation, there's a time frame. So can we consider that in this management plan?
I think we can definitely consider to clarify that timing. Just for reference here, this is the entrance, and this is actually where the existing gate is. It's quite close to this area, and the intention is that there's going to be staff there, and they'll be able to see when those needs are for the area. And that the applicant has also informed me that his staff will all have walkie-talkies and will all be communicating to one another, so there shouldn't be any delays, but we can definitely make sure that we're clarifying that.
I can add to that, Mayor. When it comes to emergency response, absolutely, that should be part of the management plan, to have, during operating hours, to have staff available. I will just point out, under typical circumstances now, that gate is often closed and locked anyways. So if it is industrial use or whatnot, or our own use, users have keys, or they have their own arrangements to get keys. So if it is during operating hours and there's an attendant there who can open it for them, that'll probably be even better or easier for them than what is currently the case. Yeah, there shouldn't be much of a change in that regard for other already currently existing operations.
Yeah, it's just important to set that minimum standard. I've got a few more questions, but I'll go back to Councillor Stoner, Pettingill, and then back to Councillor Anderson, unless there was someone new that had a question. Okay, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. So my question is, I want to go to a little bit around noise and nighttime events. I know in your presentation you said that nighttime activity is not currently included. However, in the CD zone language, the amphitheater is a principal use, and there are no specific conditions around noise. I wonder if that's something that we should be considering at this stage, just preemptively, or if it's we feel okay kind of leaving it for a later date.
If I may, through there, I think that is something that we can deal through the management agreement. Perhaps not with noise, but with activity, because noise is not something that we're just not set up to measure decibels. I think it's much easier to deal with activity than the noise that's generated by it.
Yep.
So on that, I'm curious, would any evening events at this time have to go through the district permitting process?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, in order to allow for night activity, at this point, they would have to go to amend their DPA 1. So if this whole process goes through, they would go through a development permit, Area 1, and there would be a permit attached to that, which would have conditions of dusk to dawn, no activity. And in order to change that, they would have to go through and amend that process. There would be lots of reports attached to that as well.
Any more? Yep.
And then also noting that we are requiring a secondary sewage treatment system on site, but I'm expecting that there'll still be some form of discharge required. I'm curious where that discharge would go and who would be responsible for monitoring any sort of effluent.
Through you, Mayor. So yes, there will be essentially a secondary treatment system in the form of a septic system. In this case, it would be infiltration into the ground. So design needs to be approved by VCH. In terms of monitoring, I honestly don't know. I don't believe the district has any involvement in the monitoring, but I can look into that for sure. In terms of discharge, though, it would be, yeah, infiltrated throughout the ground.
Good? Councilor Vanga?
So, three things. In the traffic analysis, I saw, a fair bit of analysis around wait times and predictions there. Unless I missed it, I didn't see much about safety, and it's not clear to me that there's a correlation between wait times and safety. So, can you speak to whether or not we've analyzed safety impacts, or if that's even a municipal responsibility, or would that be provincial highway, really MOTI's responsibility?
Through you, Mayor. So you're right. The whole point of doing the TIA is really, it's not about how long their patrons are going to have to wait. It's more about, does this introduce a scenario where you're just going to have people driving erratically to try to get on the highway? I mean, ultimately, safety is the real question. And you're right. It doesn't. The report itself does not make a clear connection between the wait times and the actual safety of the intersection. So I think the point is of the report. The point that the TIA makes that's important to us. So hopefully, to answer the first question, is pointing out the fact that this is already an underperforming intersection. So it is not a great intersection from a safety perspective. And so we are approving this adds more vehicles to an intersection that already has a low level of service, essentially. So what does that mean from a safety perspective? If people have to wait longer and longer, do they drive more erratically? Do they take alternate options? So unfortunately, it doesn't really dive into those details. It's all based on how you can model it. The report itself looks at very conservative driving techniques. The way the model is put together, and so it gives this, and that coupled with other things like the growth rate on the highway, it gives these really long delay times, which then makes you think, well, does that mean people are going to start jumping out into traffic to get out? It doesn't really answer those questions, to be honest. What it does do is it offers some solutions to try and improve what's already there, and essentially offers those as options. The only real way to significantly improve this intersection is with a major overhaul, which is realistically not realistic for this project. So I don't know if that really answers that first part of the question.
Do you have something?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think Devin made some very good points, and I think the other piece here is to note that we're still kind of in flux as to how much it actually worsens the existing wait times that are at that intersection. So if 1% growth rate was approved and the U-turn signage was managed, so that there wasn't a lot of U-turn activity at this intersection, we would really be seeing an increase in wait times over the next 10 years of 0.5 minutes, so 30 seconds. So would that cause erratic driving? That report is not really going to say that, but that's kind of what those numbers tried to tell you. The other piece is that we have kind of move to the next slide here. The other piece is that we have asked for some improvements to this intersection with the idea of safety in mind. So having a longer slip line will allow for people to accelerate, have a little bit more time to accelerate safely onto the highway. And we also took in mind that potentially there's going to be a trail network coming through and some upgrades to the corridor trail to the gondola, and that these elevated raised channel islands will help pedestrian flow through that area as well. So there was safety in mind with these upgrades, but as Devin confirmed, that they can't really compare the two in this report.
Follow up?
Yeah, is it unreasonable then to sort of want or expect sort of an analysis of, this is the current accident rate, and this is what we expect in the change in accident rate as a result of the design change proposals, and we would sort of make our decisions based on that as opposed to wait times?
Yeah, so that's, through you, Mayor. The tricky part there is that I believe when the applicant's consultant looked into accident rates over the last, I forget how many years, but several years, there's only one recorded ICBC claim accident at that intersection. So it's not a great intersection. You can look at it, go drive it, and realize this is not a great intersection. But the data doesn't suggest that it's this horrible scenario, right? So as I'm learning, traffic impact assessments are interesting because they throw a whole bunch of data at you, but it's really easy to just get bogged down in the numbers. And that's, we talk a lot about wait times and what that's going to mean, but it doesn't, the TIA itself doesn't necessarily correlate. It's really hard to correlate that to what that's going to mean from a safety perspective. So I think the key point that we need to consider here is that it's not a great intersection from a design perspective, but there's not a lot of traffic. And I think the reason there aren't a lot of accidents here is because there simply isn't that much traffic ultimately compared to other areas of town. But that being said, this project will put more vehicles and more people into that intersection, albeit a small amount. I think it's at the peak 17 cars per hour is what it works out to. So understanding that portion of it, and without getting too dragged down into the numbers with vehicle wait times and whatnot, I think the ultimate, or the bottom line is that there are small things that can be done now to improve safety in general for this intersection, such as better delineation for traffic and just making it more clear as to where people are supposed to go. And so that's what's being recommended, and that's what staff has supported or is supporting as a recommendation. Anything above and beyond that at this point, we really see as kind of overkill for this project specifically. However, and speaking to maybe your second question, whose responsibility is this? MOTI definitely is responsible for this intersection. And this is a broader question, as Councilor Anderson has pointed out. When looking at this intersection on whole, and especially when you apply anticipated growth rate or anticipated growth on the sea to sky, this intersection just gets worse and worse and worse. And so really that's not our responsibility, that's MOTI's. Where our responsibility comes in is in specifically this project, and specifically what does this project do to this intersection. And so we're not anticipating a significant impact to the intersection, but identifying that even with or without it, there's improvements that could be made. So I feel like this is a good compromise or a good agreement that we can come to at this point. Now, the updated TIA might flesh out some more details as to what else could be done here, especially as we review the other impacts to the west, traffic to the west, like the slip lane, impacts on slip lane and whatnot. That might change things, and there might be some other options that are identified. But yeah, definitely, it's definitely something that MOTI has to be involved in as well, for sure.
That was a long answer.
Sorry.
I think so. A different topic.
Okay.
So it allows for the rezoning allows for 2,000 square meters, which I calculate to a little over 25,000 square feet of aggregate floor space. And unless I'm misunderstanding something, that seems to be a lot more covered floor space than I was imagining. And so I just wanted to clarify, does it need to be that big, or does this include, an uncovered amphitheater? Should we be distinguishing between sort of outdoor deck space versus covered space? Because that seemed like a lot bigger than what I had in mind.
So through you, Mayor, there was a little bit of flexibility added to that number. It does not, I believe the exact number of all the buildings summed up is close to just like about 1,200. And so I added the 2,000 in order to provide some flexibility for growth in the future so that they wouldn't have to come back here and do a full rezoning to do that. We also, in our zoning bylaw, have, when we calculate square footage, a whole bunch of requirements of when you calculate that, and I just didn't want to restrict them. Say if they were to cover a boardwalk or cover a certain area for weather protection, and maybe it does trigger square footage, that they would, that would be considered as they wouldn't be able to move forward with that. So it could be reduced if council chooses to, but I provided that number as for flexibility for growth in the future.
If I may just add to that, one more point is that the bylaw does have a map of the proposed area, does have the structures laid out, so whatever happens outside has to be generally in keeping with that plan. So any major deviations from this plan would need a rezoning.
Good. All right. I have Council Race, Council French, and Council Anderson, Council Stoner.
Thank you. And that was sort of touched on my question. Could you go back to the site plan, please? Yeah, that'll do. So we're rezoning the entire parcel in this application, or the application is to rezone it. In phase 2 that you spoke about, I interpreted it as being more or less the lower left, lower right-hand part of that site below the road. And so that was my question. Could something show up on phase 2 that we don't see in this site plan right now? I mean, apart from the trails that we anticipate that are showing the dashed lines and the bridges, could other buildings be there or other uses that aren't particularly part of phase 1? And so I'm not quite clear on the answer, because I can understand what's existing there on phase 1 is, I forget the numbers that Councillor Pettengill cited off, but you stated that actually the number for the total zoning is a little bit higher than up to 2,000 square meters. And so some of that might appear on phase 2. There is that flexibility. But then, if I understood Mr. Velanishkas, we're zoning what we see there as buildings, building form more or less and shape. So is it possible to have buildings appear on phase 2 within that 2,000 square foot number without a further rezoning?
So through you, Mayor, a lot of the phase 2 trails, as you can see, are really quite close to the water, and therefore would be in the SPIDA and would not be supported. So they would not be allowed to have any buildings within this area. Is that clear?
But that's right along the river.
Yeah, along the river. So
But going over a little bit left, maybe more closer to the entrance.
closer here, yeah. So if the project does require a development permit, so if any building were to come forward that was over 10 square meters, or would trigger, the development permit, we would have to review that as part of the development permit review. So there would be an opportunity to kind of make sure that it's meeting the guidelines and it's meeting the intention of the zone. So there wouldn't be any, I would say, major surprises or changes that way to this site plan.
So,
Yes, a new building could go somewhere else that we don't see today.
Yeah, the way I guess so. The way we try not to lock down in the zoning bylaw. We have it should generally conform to this site plan in order to provide a little bit flexibility so that at the detailed design stage there's a little bit more growth. But it wouldn't really allow for say, a large building to come over in a completely different area. It may allow for a few more buildings at this concession area because it's really not mapped out, but it wouldn't be a brand new area of development. Is that clear?
Yeah, I guess I'm just not clear what the threshold might be for something coming along that we just don't contemplate today, just to, what we've in effect zoned for it.
So maybe I'll try one more time. So if we use this as an example, this is just a very preliminary review site plan of what could potentially be in this area. However, at development permit stage, they may have one more building here, or that building may be double in size. So that would kind of be conforming to this site plan and would be allowed under the zone. If we were to, say, look at some whole other area where there's only trail, that would not be supportable.
And then that would require further DP or even a further rezoning.
It would probably require a further rezoning amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Councilor French.
Thank you. And I acknowledge staff for the great work that's been put into this report. It's comprehensive, and I can see that it took some effort, so thank you. What I don't recall seeing in the report is anything around amplified sound and lighting. So I'm wondering, is there any kind of mechanism from our perspective that could put restrictions on amplified sound?
So I'll maybe let Yona speak to that again around the sound piece, because there's challenges with sound, but for the lighting component, lighting would also trigger environmental review, which is why we would be securing it so that it's only operational from dusk to dawn, so that lighting is really not part of this project. I think there's thought that potentially somewhere down the future they'd want to explore this, but then that would have to come back and through our permitting process to review that. So at this time, lighting is not considered and will not be needed because operation will only be from dusk until dawn. And then noise.
Dawn till dusk.
Dawn till dusk. I'm well,
Further
yeah, thank you.
In terms of noise, yes, that's a really good point in this location. However, we do, noise is so subjective that unless you're set up for measuring noise levels, it's very challenging to enforce. So we would much prefer to stick to the hours of operation essentially, which in this case is during the day, rather than try to decide what the appropriate levels of noise are here and when they're appropriate. It becomes a real challenge for any complaints and enforcement.
There is a stage on this whole layout. I think this is
Yeah,
where Councillor French's questions are coming from, is there's a stage, so what's happening on the stage?
They would be allowed assembly uses, so there's no restrictions on what could happen at that stage.
Well, yeah. So I think that BC Parks is a really great example of best practices on this issue. For the most part, amplified sound is not permitted in BC Parks, and I think we'd be well served to have some kind of restriction around amplified sound. I just would hate to see this site become a music festival location. Don't think that's consistent with what I want to see in this location. I don't think it's consistent with the values of the applicant, having had some discussions and walked the site. And then I'm thinking about, what if there's a sale and there's a new owner who has a new and different vision that includes music festivals, amplified sound, and quite disruptive. I'd like to follow up on lighting as well. I get the dawn till dusk, and then there will be lighting in these buildings. I mean, there has to be for safety. So I think my point with the lighting is I'd like to see some kind of language around shielding to keep the lighting pointed down and no leakage, nighttime skies, that type of thing.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I'd like to address bus turnaround. We want, as much as we can, to encourage bus traffic or bus users to the site. And the fine print is challenging for me, and I just wondered if we could review what the bus turnaround situation is. In the staff report under access to Powerhouse Springs, where the gate is discussed, it says an attendant will open it as required for tour bus turnaround. That seems a little clumsy to me. I wondered what are the regular day-to-day provisions for bus turnaround? Where is that? Is it easy? Is it convenient to facilitate?
Sure, through you, Mayor. Yeah, so operation of the gate would be by an attendant, and details of that would be captured under the operating plan or management plan for the project, which I believe would be capturing, Kerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but capturing under the provincial license. So that would be a requirement of them to uphold that. To be able to operate this and have that license, they would have to meet whatever they say they're going to do in terms of operation. And then turnaround is past the gate before you get to the bridge. There's a big open area there, and there will be as you can kind of see on the plan there, an area. It's actually the emergency pull-in spot for the fire truck,
Right.
for them to nose in and then do a 3-point turn out. So that would be the typical area for buses to turn.
So is it sufficiently convenient for bus users here in your view?
I believe so. This isn't open to the public. So in terms of traffic, there's almost no traffic for them. They'll have to coordinate with each other, obviously. Yeah, I feel that this is sufficient as a turnaround.
Thank you.
Councillor Stoner?
I just want to clarify, the proponent has suggested providing e-charging stations for vehicles and bikes. I'm curious if we secure that in the zoning language or not?
So good, no, very good question. We do not. So, and the rationale for that is because of the cost of it up front to get this project going. It is in the intention, it's going to be in the management plan to secure a timeline for that, but we didn't want to restrict it and put it in the zone because then it would be required from day one of the build out. But they are going to be putting receptacles in there and electrical charging for that area. It just wouldn't be all provided from day one.
Grace?
Thank you. And back to Councillor French's point about the noise. I hadn't thought of that actually, but I think that's a valid point. And I take the point that it's difficult to enforce unless we have to enforce it. In which case we could have a bylaw officer up there with a decibel counter or something. Because I'm thinking about, first of all, the impact on nature, but also Valleycliff is relatively close. And I know when the festival was on, the Squamish Festival was on, I could hear that up in my house in the top of the Highlands. And you put up with it because it's 1 or 2 nights a year, but this could potentially be every day at very worst. The people in Valleycliff might hear amplified noise. And so I don't want to say you can't have amplified noise, but I think I would put some kind of a circle around it in terms of, and I don't know what the numbers are, either decibels, so somebody with a guitar singing folk songs might be okay, but a rock band with a really loud bass might not be okay. And so I think you get the point, because that sound can flow. And I think it would be appropriate to have something stated somewhere so that if there were complaints, if there really was a problem developing, we had a tool to go back and actually try to solve the problem.
Through your Mayor, I definitely think those are both very good points, and we're happy to bring something back for a public hearing for this council.
Anyone else? I just had some questions around usually with the rezoning, we get to talk about CACs and benefits to the community. I think there are some benefits baked into this, one being community access to the central area without necessarily going to the canyon walk. But in terms of like fire safety, it talks about fire hydrants being in proximity, but what does that mean practically for our firefighters? Are they carrying hoses in from trucks that are parked on the road, and should there be hoses there already?
Through you, Mayor. So, yes, for our fire department to respond, they'd be pulling into that grayed out area, hooking up a hose and pumping the hose into the bush or into wherever they need to. Now, to get to that, the concession area with the stage and whatnot, they would, there's an access road, which is also an egress for pulling people out of there if they need to. The applicant has indicated that he plans to train all staff in firefighting and have their own measures in place, which makes sense because this is going to take a while to get to. So they're going to want to protect their own business. But in terms of our forces, they would use their own equipment, obviously, and pull in. Now, from a BC building code perspective, this meets the requirements from a hydrant proximity perspective and all that, but that is how they look at it first.
And then, given the kayaking that happens around there and river access, are there improvements we could make to facilitate rescues that could come with this development? Given that there's high-risk activities that take place there, and is there something we could do to facilitate SAR efforts or those that are already on site if something goes awry?
So I know the applicant has already expressed some ideas around those things. We can definitely go back to the applicant and ask him if he's open to securing some of those as part of this package.
Council, anything else come to mind? Council Bacon?
I have comments, I can wait till there's a motion.
Yes, you should wait till there's a motion on the floor. If you want to do that.
Sure, I'll move it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, yeah, I'll move it.
You're moving the staff recommendation. Seconded by Council Race. Do you want to speak to it, Council Bacon?
Yeah, so, because there will be, I guess I'm eager to hear some of the public feedback. We've gotten a bunch today, and I'm interested to give a deeper look into this and hear what people have to say. A couple thoughts as I go through this. I think it's important, and I hope that for the public hearing, I would really like to see drawings that reflect maximum build out. So if we are proposing 2,000 square meters, that we have drawings that approximate 2,000 square meters. I think part of the pitch to this is low impact. And so I think this will be a sensitive topic. And we can articulate that there isn't a plan to do the full build out now, but I think people should be discussing this based on whatever number it is we're putting in there. The other piece that I'm just sort of rolling around in my mind, I know the proponent is quite committed to reducing GHG impacts. And there's a fair bit of discussion about the move to public transit away from single occupancy vehicles. But when I think about some of the other discussions we're having in the community and how we have to really be aggressive on this, I do have some hesitation about a new business that's even contemplating 100 cars or 125 cars even from day one at this point. And it's a bit of a dilemma because I do sort of see this proponent ahead of many other proponents and many other projects in terms of thinking about these sorts of topics. But on the other hand, I'm not sure it's nearly as aggressive as we just generally need to be. And so that's a piece for me that I'm still not sure about. But because I want to hear more and interested in seeing the discussion move forward, I support moving it forward to third reading.
Council Race?
Thank you, and I will be supporting first and second reading. That's not, of course, final approval. That is, for me, that is just, it's close enough to form to take it through the public process. But I think staff have heard comments from various members of council, questions, concerns that I think would be probably incorporated into it before it gets to public hearing, most of them. And so, but as far as being in the process now and going to public hearing, I am supporting that. I'll support first and second reading.
Council French, then Councillor, I'll go down the row here.
Thank you. We've had some good discussion tonight and some very good public feedback over the last couple of days. expressing some very thorough opinions about the project on both sides. And I am looking forward to staff taking what's been expressed tonight at this table back and then presenting whatever it is you present for us for third reading and for the community to consider as we move this forward.
Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. I will also be supporting the motion on the floor. Happy to see this go forward to public hearing. As other councillors have mentioned, we've already received a lot of feedback. I think we'll continue to get that into public hearing, and I'm excited to hear what the community has to say about this project. Personally, the piece that I continue to kind of grapple with is this kind of ground wide events, and I realize that the permits are around dusk to dawn. But I think one of the strong components of this project is that the public will have access to that gathering space without necessarily having to go through the whole walkway, that this actually presents an opportunity to have a cafe and a play structure for the community to actually use. And so part of that could be somebody playing a guitar and what that looks like. And so some restrictions on noise I think will be important for the community. But I also think that we don't want to necessarily completely tamper their ability to have some sort of entertainment in that space as well. That's part of the positive aspect for the community in this proposal. And with that, I'm happy to support the motion and see it come forward. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, in reviewing all the input we've received, there's a lot of reference to pressures on our backcountry and in this general area. And certainly we need to address some of these pressures in different strategies and tactics, and we are doing this with other partners like the provincial government. But this project is just part of that bigger context. And I think as far as the values to be protected here, natural, recreation access, addressing wildfire risks, canyon safety, and neighborhood interface, I see that there's a lot of net gains with this project, but also some need for assurances and clarifications, and I'll hope to see those forthcoming at third reading. Thank you.
Councillor Herbert?
Thank you. I'll be supporting this at this time. I still have some reservations about the traffic impact, and if anything's going to be done, if this is a catalyst, I think, to do some work on that intersection and to make sure that we are approaching that as the needs of all the users at that intersection. There's a fixed amount of real estate between the barriers and the highway, and make sure that we do whatever is done there. And I know that's a MOTI piece, but I think that's critical. And as much as the claims there's only been one, I think there's a high potential for safety concerns there. And yeah, but as a whole, I've been impressed with the work done with staff and the proponent to address the access issues that the various groups have been coming forward, and I look forward to hearing from the public at the public hearing, so I'll be supporting. Thank you.
Okay, just quickly, I will be supporting the motion. I'm not sure that our highway improvements necessarily go far enough. I don't know if there's more work we can do with the province there without putting more cost onto the proponent, but I wonder if we can slow the speed down further up the hill. Right now, the speed doesn't change till you're past this intersection. That seems a little bit nutty to me. Also, highways doesn't use reflective paint, and so if you're turning left to go north, it's very difficult to see that that first lane is actually a turning lane. It's not your driving lane, and I just think there's more that could be done here, and I'm happy for us to be part of lobbying the province. It is their intersection, and they do have industrial users on both sides of this highway. So I would like staff to give a little more thought to that, and taking in Councillor Anderson's feedback that other designs have actually proposed a lane northbound that would not allow for this slip lane. So I just want to rethink that. I think for me it would be great to see in the public hearing report about the context of this when it's everything around it builds out. It's surrounded by future neighborhoods, basically. And it would be great to just see a statement about how this fits in, 15 years from now, in the context of being surrounded by an urban environment. I think that would be something that's missing for me in terms of how we tell the story about providing people access to nature and education in close proximity to where we live. And then I think just being really clear for the public at the hearing about those outstanding pieces that will be captured at adoption, not at public hearing, because I think that sometimes hard for people when they don't have all the details they need at public hearing. So just making sure that our information at that public hearing is really clear about what we've captured as of the public hearing and what information comes before we can finally adopt this project. Otherwise, great work so far, and look forward to hearing more from the public. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Council, for your questions. Okay, we're moving on to item 10, which is our consent agenda. Any councilors that are in conflict with any item on this consent agenda should pull it, and we'll do it separately. Or if there's anything, letters or minutes that you need to pull, do it now. Councilor Pettingill.
I'd like to pull letters 6, 7, 11, and 12.
6, 7, 12. Okay. Anything else? Got a hand, Councilor Anderson?
Just checking to see whether the advisory design panel minutes are in the consent agenda. I see that they are not.
No, they are separate. So, motion to approve the consent agenda, pulling the letters referred to by Councilor Pettingill, moved by Councilor French, second by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Pettingill, you. Oh, no. Should I do, I'll do action requested and then no letters? Yeah. So on to item 12A, we have a letter from A. Mueller's around the water meter program that be referred to the Director of Major Projects for response. I believe that response has occurred, but moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then Councilor Pettingill. Letter 6.
Yeah, letter 6 and 7 I wanted to handle together, and I would like to forward them to the relevant staff working on the WLNG file. So we'll move
For consideration.
for consideration.
That is moved by Councilor Pettingill. Is it seconded by anyone? Seconded by Councilor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You hadn't pulled letter 11, I would have. So go for it.
Yeah, I'm just looking, I forwarded a resolution here. So I'd like to resolve that the District of Squamish send a letter supporting Victoria's UBCM harm reduction resolutions as requested by the City of Victoria, and that a copy of the letter be shared with the City of Victoria. This is, so Victoria asked for some support on some UBCM harm reduction resolutions. We had a discussion about the letter in November.
Yeah, I think it was on a November, and so at that time, Councilor Pettingill asked if we could refer it out to some of our community organizations to understand whether this was a good approach. This is Squamish Helping Hands response.
So based on their response, I suggest we support Victoria's request to support their resolutions.
Okay. That is moved by Councilor Pettingill, seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And letter 12.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on this briefly. I think this came up a little bit ago, and it's not asking us, I don't think, to actually proclaim anything right at this point. And I just wanted to reflect, having watched our RCMP over the last year, done a ride along, just I guess the amount of appreciation and pride I feel with our RCMP and the efforts the membership are making in terms of reconciliation and working constructively with our community. I'm always a little bit hesitant about groups sometimes putting forward motions like this and some of the context around it, because there's this broader context. Some of the news coming out of Stoughton and so on is concerning, and sometimes some of these proclamations I find lack some of the nuance. So I just wanted to comment on, I guess the strong pride I have in our local RCMP, and just request that to the degree we think about this sort of request in the future, that we're just remembering some of the broader context and handling it with sensitivity. And I'll just leave it at that as a comment for now.
So you're not requesting any action on this?
No.
All right, motion to receive those letters? No? Is that what I need to do now?
You can, you don't have to.
Oh, okay. I won't then. Never mind. We have item 15, advisory design panel minutes to receive. Move by. French, second by Councilor Anderson. Councilor Anderson, do you have a question?
Yes, I wondered if I could just mention that in the last meeting, that minutes for which we have in front of us, Planning Director Jonas Valaniskas gave a presentation on EDP role refresher. I caught that presentation. I found it very interesting. I wonder if I could ask if Mr. Valaniskas' presentation could be made available to council. One of the things that was discussed was advisory design panel not only discussing the value of their deliberations for us, but looking ahead to climate action initiatives and how they affect their work.
So we should go watch the EDP.
Yes, we should. But the slides may be of interest to us as well.
Do we vote on that?
Yes.
All those in favor of receiving minutes? Opposed? There are no in-camera announcements. There was no unscheduled public attendance. Open question period for clarification. Seeing none, council or staff announcements. I will begin with saying that I participated in the Eagle Count on Sunday, 34th annual Eagle Watch Count. And I learned today that Helltown Brewing has a seasonal ale explicitly for the Eagle Watch volunteers. So if you haven't tried it, you might want to. It was great. I got to walk with our MP, Patrick Bylaw, who didn't quite have the right gear, but you'll learn for next year when it's raining. But it was a great day, and I so appreciate the volunteers and the Brackendale Art Gallery that host this event. Councilor might speak to it as well. He was soft and rough day in the cold and rain. Otherwise, I had a great some time off over the holidays, and looking forward to this year. Any other announcements? All right, I'll start there and come around. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, I think most of us have probably seen it, this story covered in the Squamish Chief newspaper, but we have a local business been nominated for the BC Small Business Award, namely Squamish Connector. And they were among the top 10 contenders for the Best Community Impact Award. And I just thought that maybe we should give reference to them here, because really their story is innovation and perseverance in trying to meet community needs. We know that the gondola issue has been challenging for many businesses, including Squamish Connector, but they've responded by looking for other ways that they can serve the community and serve their own business. And it's good to see them getting recognition.
Thank you. Councilor Stoner.
Looking forward, I just want to put in a plug. We're currently trying to pull together a council coffee call day for next week, Wednesday, January 15th. So look forward to some times on that one. And then also on Thursday, January 16th, council will be hosting a public information meeting on our budget 2020. And that
Councillor Stoner just stole my item. So I too will give a plug for that budget information meeting. I encourage anybody who is remotely interested in budget planning to pop into that event on January 16th at the Ledge on Cleveland Avenue and provide us with some feedback on the budget process.
Awesome. I'm going to do a plug for all the events happening at the Bag this month around the Eagle Festival and their Natural World Lecture Series 2020. Bob Turner, Elizabeth Day, myself, January 18th, and Lee Joseph. So I'll be speaking about my trip to the Arctic, what I learned there, and relating it back to our climate action plan. So I hope to see you all there.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just thawed from my Eagle Count mission. I had the pleasure, Squamish Rafting Company generously donates rafts and guides and transport for and everything for the Eagle Count, and has done for a number of years. So I had the pleasure of rafting the Squamish on Sunday, which was a bit of a downpour, and with a raft full of enthusiastic volunteers, and we for the section of river that we were responsible for counting, we actually tied the record, which wasn't the case in some of the other areas. So I was happy to see lots of eagles out and a herd of elk as well. And on the, I think I spent 4 hours on the Squamish River in a pretty well stationary in a in this whitewater raft, and the whole crew was happy and joyous the whole way through. So it was great to see all the efforts of all the volunteers of the Eagle Count, and the energy of everyone in the Bag in the morning before setting out, and remarkably equally high after being rained on the various postings throughout the day. So I encourage everyone to get involved in the events yet to come as part of the Eagle Count sort of season at the Bag, and to get involved in future with the count. It's a great event.
Anything down this way? Have the Bag yet? No. All right. Oh.
I'll be the third person to give a plug for the budget meeting, but somebody should say the time.
4:30 to 7:30.
It's on the district website
Good answer.
and in the newsletter that everybody subscribes to.
It is 4:30 to 7 at the Ledge. So, thank you. All right, motion to terminate. I'll move that, seconded by Councilor French. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.